Hi, boys and girls. Thanks for joining me in Stevie's Treehouse here. Greetings from Mighty Fine Guitars in Lafayette, California. And today, boys and girls, we're going to talk about Martin Dreadnoughts because for some reason, and I never know how this works, I don't know what the calculus is behind all of this, I'll have no Martin Dreadnoughts for months at a time. And then, I think some people call it the Joshua Tree effect, kicks in pretty hard. And all of a sudden, I'll have tons. And I happen to have 3 here today. So, let's meet the oldest one first. This one came in. I'm not sure this guitar is going to stay here, actually. This needs a little repair. It was a mystery guitar when it came in because the gentleman opened up the case and he said, I looked at the online and the serial number says it's from 1951. And I looked at the finish and I thought, that's either original finish in spectacular shape or a really fine refinish job. And I've had a couple of people more expert than me look at it. We all think that it's the original finish. But the strange thing about it is that the bridge has been replaced. It's a good job with a bad bridge. So this one needs a little bit of help. The neck is going to need a reset pretty soon, which, I'm surprised it hasn't been reset since, although perhaps I'm not surprised because clearly it hasn't been played in a long time. Somebody did a nice job, had a nice idea for replacing the bridge, but they should have gotten a real live Martin bridge replacement or something that's exactly to specs. This one is too big, too wide, and too low. But this was a solution that a lot of people thought to themselves, oh, I can do this myself. The strings are kind of coming up. Dreadnoughts are not strictly, but typically strung with medium gauge strings, which tends to pull the neck up. And after a while, any Martin is going to need a neck reset where they crack the neck off. It's a hell of a thing if you've never seen it or heard it. It's really something. But until then, people think, well, all I need to do really is lower the bridge saddle down here. So it gets lower and lower and lower, and the break angle of the string across the bridge saddle there gets lower and lower, and tone gets sacrificed and all of that. It's kind of a sad solution. This person thought, well, that whole bridge is way too tall. I'll just make a new bridge and shrink the whole thing down. So now, even though this guitar is pretty compromised in terms of what the tone could be, it still sounds like a Martin. Imagine, with a good bridge, a couple $100, and the installation time, and a neck reset, $400 to $600 for a lot of folks, depends on who you talk to here in the Bay Area. This could be a screaming guitar, and the finish is just remarkable. Adirondack spruce top, mahogany back and sides, of course. A little note, just a little bit of extra deep geeking. The Martin nomenclature goes like this. The letter that happens first tells you about the size of the guitar. D means dreadnought, means big. The Dreadnought was the biggest ship in the British fleet. So when the Martin company came out with their biggest guitar by far at the time, they called it the Dreadnought. So D is the biggest one. Then the next sizes involve O's, however many zeros are in there. 4 zeros is the next size, 3 zeros, then 2 zeros, then 0. Then below 0 are what are real live parlor guitars. People often talk about parlor guitars. It's anything smaller than I expect. But in true Martin nomenclature, a parlor is something smaller than an O. But this is the big boy. This is the big bad beastie that kind of powered the whole folk and folk rock thing through the 60s and the 70s in particular. And this is the guitar, actually, that in a left-handed way kind of spawned all of the smaller builders that came out. Eric Schoenberg and Dana Bourgeois, back in, I'll have to find out what the year was, late 70s, early 80s, went to Martin and said, you've been making all these dreadnoughts, and oops, some of those dreadnoughts you made in the 70s were really not so very good. They were heavily overbuilt. The bridges were on in the wrong place. Not so good. The best guitar you folks ever made was the Triple O and the OM, from the OM in particular, from the 1930s. To prove it to you, let us take over your shop at night when you folks all go home. We'll build you up a few. And they did, and Martin said, ooh, you're right. We should be building these as well. So they started building the OMs and Triple O's again, and that's what got a lot of these other builders excited about building as well, because the Martin really had kind of a lock on the Dreadnoughts, although companies have tried to out Martin. Collings and Santa Cruz in particular have gone after the Dreadnought market as well. But for the bluegrassers, if it ain't a Martin, it ain't a guitar for a lot of them. You know, they want that old, and I hate to refer to a guitar from 1951 as old, but you know what? I went online. Griffin is a great shop around here. I used to work for them down in Palo Alto, great shop. I went online just to kind of take a look around, and they said, you know, here's the vintage section. And vintage kids now is anything before 1980. Breaks my heart. And there's a general groan in the room here. But, yes. It's shocking, yes, children that are vintage. So how about that? So this is from 1951, and I'm pretty sure this is the original finish. It's just fantastic. All it needs, and it's substantial, it's a substantial fix, but the brothers who brought this in, I'm going to recommend to them strongly, that what they really need to do is have the bridge replaced with a Martin bridge and get a neck reset, and this is going to be a screaming guitar. At the moment, this would be somewhere in the 5s, I'm guessing, you know, just even as is, but with a neck reset and a new bridge, the 8s, 9 maybe, who knows. In this kind of condition, it's really spectacular. So this one's from 1951, a D18. Another D18 from 1956 that just walked in yesterday. There I was, eating my sandwich, had a mouthful of tuna salad, and this D18 walks in with a lovely, lovely lady toting it. Here's one from 1956, my birth year. That hurts too. And this one has been rode hard and put up wet a few times, but that's okay because it plays great. It's currently got some light gauge strings on there. I'm going to string it up later with medium gauge strings, which is really what a dreadnought is kind of all about. You're looking in a dreadnought, what you've got available, at least if you want it, is lots of power for strumming and single note stuff, lots of volume, lots of bass. And this one, even with light strings, sounds pretty darn good. Oops, pop that out of there. Let's tune this bad boy. Don't we have one around here somewhere? Folks, I wanted to tell you, if you're a Facebook webcast fiend, there's going to be one off of the KVMR radio page. KVMR is a wonderful radio station up here in Nevada City in Northern California, way left of the dial, and they do great broadcasting stuff, kind of in the mold of KFAT radio from years and years ago, lots of Americana music of various types. And myself and Glenn Houston, late of Houston Jones, and Joe Craven are going to do a webcast from there at 5 o'clock on Sunday. So if you, as soon as you're done here, run on over to the KVMR Facebook page and like them. And then at 5 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time this Sunday, tune in, because it'll be myself and Glenn Houston, the Quitters, along with Joe Craven. And that should be a ton of fun. And we're all kind of tuned up here. Yeah, I think with medium strings, this bad boy would be kind of up where the bluegrassers like it. Typically bluegrassers, because they're going to be hitting hard and competing with the banjos, they're always looking for a banjo killer guitar, and this will be one with medium strings. They'll tolerate higher action than fingerstylers, typically like dead low action. But for a dreadnought, where you really wanted to feature the volume and the range of the guitar, and lots of single note stuff and strumming, even with really light strings, this is a Martin through and through. And again, the D stands for dreadnought. The 18 means mahogany back and sides, essentially, and a few other things. Fairly simple appointments. This one's from 1956. Typically mahogany necks, and this one's got a rosewood fingerboard. And this one has been played. There's some pitting on the fingerboard, which is just right. This is just what you want from 1956. The frets are in pretty good shapes. The first 5 probably need a little refretting, but this one has been played a ton. And it's the original finish, which is of great interest to a lot of folks. And for this year, the range on this is going to be between $4,500 and $6,000 roundabout is kind of the general range for a 56 Dread in pretty darn good condition, in great playing condition. You know, it's cosmetically not so gorgeous, but a lot of folks, on the other hand, look at old Martins and say, it better look like that, or else I don't trust it. You know, that's one of the things about this guitar, is that it's been played, but it's not been played in a long time. So I'm going to recommend to the brothers that own this that they take it over to Louis Santer, wonderful repair guy here in the area in Berkeley. Have him do a neck reset, replace the bridge and perhaps the first couple of frets. This one, the first couple of few frets, probably the first 5 need replacing, and this one's going to be in great shape. But this one, since we don't have a price on this one, this we've got priced at $46.50, which is kind of on the low end of things. And if you want to throw a few hundred extra bucks into this, because that's such a nice low price, have a screaming Dreadnought Martin from 1956 at D18. Great sounding guitar. In fact, I'll give it a little strum. Do let me know if the sound is too hot or too cold, if things are distorting, or if you can't hear things. Once again, please, a hand for Shigor, Mistress of the Machines. My own dear Valerie May. Thank you, Valerie May. Oh, that's fun. This is with light strings on a D18. Now the D18, the 18 means mahogany back and sides, which typically, categorically means fewer overtones, not as resonant, not as big and reverby, doesn't have quite the sustain. Holy smokes. Excuse me, tons of sustain, tons of overtones. Well, manageable overtones. This has got that kind of manageable overtone situation. And I'll play you a D28 in just a second that's got just these big overpowering overtones, which is kind of what a 28 and a rosewood guitar is all about. So this is the sound of mahogany. And light gauge strings. Wait till I put some mediums on here. Ooh, boy. Get out the earplugs. So here is a 1965 D28, Dreadnought body, D for Dreadnought. The 28 means rosewood back and sides. And this is from 1965, so that rosewood is Brazilian rosewood. How about that? Real pretty. This guitar has a story, and I love it when the guitars come in and I know the story. The story on this one is it came into the shop because a gentleman brought it in shortly after his sister passed away. She died and left the guitar to him because he bought it for her in 1965. He came back from the war and had discovered that his sister had lost her D1228. She had a 12-string Martin that had gotten stolen from where she was living down in Santa Cruz. And he talked to the roommate, said, what does she really want? I'm going to get her something. He says, oh, she really wants a D28, you know, and didn't we all in the mid-60s? This is the guitar that powered, you know, between these two guitars, the D18 and the D28. This is kind of what you heard on stage and on albums all the way through the 60s and the 70s. Dreadnoughts, D18s and 28s, but for the most part. Unless you were, you know, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and all them guys that were playing D45s, or Hank Williams playing a D45. This is a D28 from 1965. She left it him because he bought it for her. He asked the roommate what she wanted. The roommate said, get her a D28. He went up to a shop in San Jose and traded in the trumpet he had played in high school. He had a pretty good trumpet, and put it towards this guitar and got her this guitar, and she played the daylights out of it. For years and years. She was a folk singer out of Santa Cruz called Kai Moore, K-A-I Moore. And he brought in a little Xerox of a poster of a concert that she had done in South San Francisco at the Cow Palace with Creedence, Vanilla Fudge, who else was on the bill? Sandy Bull, Iron Butterfly, and Kai Moore. So she was out there. She was doing it. This guitar has been on stage for some pretty major stuff. It's beautiful. It's the same body configuration. The Dreadnought is a Dreadnought. All of these have 1 11/16 across the nut up here, the width of the nut. Fairly narrow. That's the thing about big guitars like this, is they typically have narrow fingerboards because they're designed for either strumming stuff like I just did, or single note stuff, you know, where the proximity of the strings to each other is kind of what you're after, so that you don't have to reach for that next string or go after it. Finger stylers, on the other hand, typically like a little more real estate in the left hand, so there's more room to move around since you're doing different things at the same time with different parts of the hand. So this is 1965, a D28. Let me get this one tuned up for you as well. These two have the open back tuners that are typical of the 50s. These have the closed back Rovers that we all had to have in the 60s. We thought they were great tuners, and by today's standards, maybe not. Oh, and I've got this tuned a half step down. Let me take it right up to pitch. The gentleman comes in, I give guitar lessons to, and he's working all that Neil Young stuff, where Neil was tuned down a half step. I noticed too that we were working on the Boxer earlier today. If you're ever trying to play the Boxer, and you're trying to play along with Paul Simon, he's tuned down a half step, 1 fret. Very tricky. John Lennon did that on a couple of Beatles songs as well. So if you've always wondered how they played that, they probably tuned it down. Or played in an alternate tuning. I can't tell you how many people I know, including me, who tried to figure out stuff off of records, not realizing that you could tune the guitar to alternate tunings. We'll talk about that sometime as well. Come on, Snark, help me out here. You know, I fancy, although it's been proven that in blind and deaf taste tests, it's really hard to tell the difference among guitars, but I fancy that I would know a Martin any old time if I heard one. There's something about the low mid-range that's very characteristic. It's got this kind of fuzz around it, very pleasant kind of set of frequencies that just shine through on any old Martin. adventure stuff is starting to pop out. My first really good guitar was a D18. My folks got it for me when I was a junior in high school, and that's where I really made progress. Having a better guitar, I'm here to testify, having a better guitar does help you play better. If there's more in there for you to get out, you learn how to get it out. If the guitar doesn't have it in there to begin with, and often, sad to say, plywood guitars, for want of a better term, laminate back and sides. The backs and sides can be laminate and it can be okay, but you definitely want a solid top. Definitely. There's some great arguments to be made actually for laminate back and sides. And there's a type of laminate top that's really good, but not when it's two pieces of the same kind of wood placed at opposite angles to each other. On less expensive guitars, the tone, it makes a note, but it doesn't give you that range and depth, and there's nothing to grow into because the laminate guitars don't grow with time. They're as good as they'll sound the minute you buy them, instead of the worst they'll ever sound the minute you buy them, which is the case with a solid topped guitar. This one's resisting being brought up to pitch. And that's the thing too, folks. If you don't play with other people a lot, and you prefer the sound of your guitar tuned down frequently, I don't think I know anybody that prefers the sound of their guitar tuned up. But if you prefer the sound of it tuned down, go for it. So long as it's in tune with itself, you will terrorize a very small portion of the population, a small percentage, because most folks have good relative pitch, but not perfect pitch. So if you're not strictly on A440, if you want to be 432 people, there's a whole tribe of folks that believe that 432 is where A should sit because it does all kinds of cool stuff. That remains to be seen, but it's a worthy experiment to tune your guitar down a little bit to see if you like it. etc., etc. So 3 Martins today, folks. Holy smokes. This is a 1965 D28. We have over here 1951 in preternaturally good condition D18. And over here a 1956 D18 in the condition you'd expect it to be in. Plays great, a little beat up, but boy does it sound fantastic. And it's in really good shape for playing. Not a collectible guitar, but certainly a player. So that's kind of what's shaken on the middle-aged Martin front here at Mighty Fine Guitars. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. Like I say, if you've got a few moments to spare on Sunday afternoon, stop in to the KVMR page on Facebook, and there'll be a live broadcast of yours truly and Glenn Houston as the Quitters, and Joe Craven, live broadcast from KVMR up in Nevada City. Great radio station, really cool. And thanks very much again to Valerie May, Mistress of the Machines, and to all y'all for stopping by. Thanks very much. All right, kids, see you next week.